I've had a letter to Prague from 1850 with an 1847 5-cent American stamp. I've had this cover for years. Probably what marks out the book that I've just written. Remember, I didn't used to collect covers. I only collected stamps. And until about 1996, I only collected stamps, high-graded stamps.
Welcome to another episode of Philacastu. I'm here joined by Nicholase Kirke, a well-known philatelist and the real estate man who stood behind the first real estate agency that was established in the Czech Republic. Nicholase, welcome.
Hello, nice to be with you.
What's your philatelic journey? Where you started, or what brought you to philately itself?
Well, it started in the attic of a boarding school in Shropshire.
Is that in the Midlands of England?
It's on the Welsh border, Shropshire. It's a very rural county. And in my day, when I was a boy, everyone collected stamps. And every school had a club, a stamp club. And this school had a stamp club in the attic. So there were crows and jackdaws scratching on the windows as we were trying to collect stamps.
So it was a pretty common collector's interest,
right? It
was
what everyone did.
Yeah, wonderful. And what actually kept you at this hobby? You know.
Well, nothing. I didn't keep with it. When you're a child, you go through approval packets. And you collect stamps with birds and parrots and zebras on. And you're not really interested in the historical details of the countries the stamps even come from. And so, in common with most people, when I got to my teens, other things were much more interesting, like young ladies, like rugby, like getting on in the army, because I joined the army. And so I forgot about stamp collecting for quite a long time.
And you probably didn't have that much time at your hands, right?
No, I didn't. No, it wasn't a suitable thing to do in the army.
So after quitting army, you found your way back to philately, or what happened?
Well, it wasn't really very simple. It was just it was when I first came to Prague, actually, that I got back into stamps in 1990. And I was on an aeroplane going to Tallinn. We also owned a lot of big property right in the square of Tallinn. And I was going to Tallinn, and I suddenly got very hot and bothered, and I couldn't understand it. And I suddenly wanted to collect stamps again, just like that. No reason for it.
Out of nowhere.
No reason for it. And so when I got back to my office, I had a chap who knew all about electricity and computers and stuff. And so I asked him, would he find out the names of all stamp dealers in America? So he found the names of 40 stamp dealers, and we sent them a letter, and inside the letter was a $5 envelope. And I said, would you please send me your price lists of stamps? That's how I started.
That is a really interesting way how to, get your contacts abroad. So obviously it worked for you.
Yes.
Would you recommend this kind of way how to get contacts into, nowadays for new collector?
Well, you've got to, to be a really good stamp collector, you've got to be a bit obsessive. You've got to be very centered in your thinking. But it can be good luck. It depends how much money you've got to spend. I was very fortunate. I started going into real estate when I went back into stamps, and I had net spendable income that I could spend on stamps.
So what actually brought you to the American stamps? Like, why didn't you stay with the Czech stamps?
I'd collected them as a boy, and what I liked about American stamps was they were line engraved. They always had lots of sports people on them, and they just looked better quality than these shiny pictures of African animals. Very glossy. They just didn't look the part. So that was the first reason that attracted me.
Was there another reason? For example, the Czech Republic has a really rich history of stamps. So those didn't interest you?
Not really, because remember, I didn't speak Czech, and I still don't. I'm quite proud of that. After 32 years, I think Lenin said you should learn. If you could learn just one word a day, you'd end up speaking the language. That's true. I should have done that. Yes, something like that. So it was just coincidental that I started earning quite a lot of money, and a rich American employed me, and I was able to do things I'd only dreamt about. I mean, we had 4 large properties on Wenceslas Square, including the Melantric building. And it was on the Melantric building on the balcony where Václav Havel and gave his talk. So that was all very exciting.
I can imagine.
It was very exciting. American stamps was not the easiest thing to collect here.
Yeah, I can imagine. Especially after the communist.
Well,
after the
just
communism.
like with furniture, I used to be an antique furniture dealer. There was no antique furniture around in Prague. All the houses had been stripped. Stamp collectors didn't have an opportunity to collect stamps, and it was rather frowned upon if people collected American stamps, for example.
Okay, yeah.
So that was another element. And of course, I did discover my Czech father, who I'd never met before, and that was the reason why I came to Prague, of course.
Okay.
And by the way, he was a stamp collector, and he'd never seen me before. So he didn't see me until I was 46. And I knocked on a green door, and he seemed to know who I was. I didn't tell him I was coming.
So you probably looked very similar.
Like
right?
peas in a pod.
Oh, God.
We took a photograph that same day in Wenceslas Square, and we looked the same. He was just a lot older than I was.
So he never knew about you?
No, he did know about me. He'd conceived me in 1945. The war was just ending. And he came back with Czech forces. He was a colonel. And of course they threw him straight into jail when he got back, which wasn't very welcoming.
Yeah, but that was the time, right?
That was what happened to everyone. But I think maybe I inherited the stamp collecting gene from him.
Absolutely. Was there any kind of initiative for the Czech collectors to have and to collect American stamps?
Yeah, there was the American Stamp Club in Czechoslovakia.
Wonderful. So you became a member of that club?
Yes, I did, although it was very difficult because very few people spoke English. But I used to go along every Saturday evening. I think we'd go along there and talk about stamps, and I would take some of my collection, which of course was fascinating for them because I was able to bring some really expensive material that they hadn't had the chance of seeing before.
So that was probably the start of your now very, very well-known collection, which has won many gold medals on the world scale. So was that the beginning of your collection there? Probably in early starts of 2000?
Yes, I had tried to buy more expensive stamps when I was in England. I sold approvals when I left the army. I was in the British Army for quite a long time. So I collected American and sold American approvals. And that was slightly better quality stamps. But nothing that I was able to afford as I could afford when I came to live in Prague. This stamp club produced a magazine every month called Spravna.
So was this publishing activity legal then?
No, yes, this was all legal. That didn't mean much to me because everything was in Czech. It was a big handicap.
Did you contribute to this magazine?
Of course. I used to take my material along and write leaflets for people to read, and they were very excited to see.
But someone had to translate
inverted
it.
stamps worth tens of thousands of dollars. That was very exciting for them, and I was flattered that someone was pleased to see this material.
But someone had to probably translate it to Czech language, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. You own probably one of the most significant and most important exhibits regarding the New York City Foreign Mail. How long are you?
Well, it wasn't easy.
I mean, yeah.
It was not, as my character is not particularly standard, and neither was my exhibit. And I met lots of merchants of doom. This is never going to happen. This won't work. You're talking about the postmark. You're not talking about the postal history. And people won't be interested in the postmarks. So I just wrote about the postmarks, and on the first time I entered, I won gold medal and I won 6 small awards. So that shut him up. But it was very non-standard. And that's actually probably what marks out the book that I've just written. Wanting to be a little bit different.
The 2-volumed book.
Yes.
Okay.
Which was published last year. And of course, I realized that to reach the top echelons of exhibiting, you had to talk about the postal history, the roots and rating of how an envelope got to a particular country. That was very important.
But was it important to the people who would actually read the book, or was it important to you as well?
No, I didn't. I found it very hard work and pretty dull, and I found it very difficult. So I pillaged the experience of other people. One chap in America, in particular, Richard Frajola, who I mentioned in my book quite a lot, a renowned postal historian, and he has always supported me.
Wonderful.
And helped me with advice.
Oh yeah. Are you actually keeping a record of how long are you putting this this big collection together?
Well, remember, I didn't used to collect covers. I only collected stamps, and until about 1996, I only collected stamps, high-graded stamps. I didn't collect postal history, and it was only when I went to my first sort of postal synopsis, I suppose it was 2010 or 2011, that was the first time I had heard about exhibiting.
Okay.
Until then, I was just a bog roll standard stamp collector. Which is what most people are.
Just off the books, not
and,
joining any
filling
clubs.
spaces with stamps. Which is very simplistic. But condition was the all-important factor. The great thing with collecting envelopes or postal history, condition is really secondary. It makes such a difference.
I'd also say that the context of the story behind the envelopes is what is really binding to those exhibits and to those items. So. Is it? Would you consider that to be true in your case?
Here's a good example for you. My darling wife over here. I've had a letter to Prague from 1850 with an 1847 5-cent American stamp. I've had this cover for years, and it's addressed to someone called Wells, W-E-L-S, in Prague. It's the only known American 5-cent stamp. It's the earliest use known to Prague. It's in its own right. It's a really rare envelope, and it's probably helped me get good marks for the first part of my exhibit. But my darling wife discovered in the last couple of months that Wells was the grandfather of Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I know this is probably long before your time, thank God. But she found out an enormous amount of interest about Audrey Hepburn. I mean, it was just fascinating.
Okay. I knew that there were some connections to Audrey Hepburn, having some relations to Czech Republic, but this is a new information.
It was just amazing what she found out.
Yeah.
So that added a whole new dimension to that. And then your colleague, what's his name, David, he started jumping up and down when I produced an envelope written to Mr. Ferrari. Well, I thought a Ferrari was the name for a car, but apparently it's someone who's very well known in the philatelic world. Poor man, he had his collection as confiscated by the Allies after the war because he just happened to support the wrong side.
Oh yeah.
And he was one of the most prolific and wealthiest collectors in the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, in fact, David brought that man to light. We didn't really think much about Ferrari, but once again, Camilla got, like a little squirrel going up a drain pipe. She thought, well, I'm going to find out more about this person.
Oh yeah,
and
that's the persistence.
Found pages and pages of information on Ferrari. It's just fascinating. So yes, there are other elements.
We are here to talk about your, as we already mentioned, 2 books that you have published last year. Why is it so significant?
Well, it's significant for me. I'm not going to be falsely modest here. I have the largest collection of New York foreign mail in the world. It's never been a collection like this, in terms of scope or in terms of expense.
Oh yeah.
And so I was very anxious that before it gets broken up, before I get run over by a tram or something, that's going to happen before long, that I should place this on record. And I felt the best way to do this was photograph all the covers or envelopes, and put them into a book and make it as interesting as possible.
I think that you've done a remarkable job at that, because the collection itself is just wonderful, and to see it pictured in a book is just something to... Well, you are truly the first person to have accomplished that.
You're a really nice person. I wish I had more friends like you.
One of our guests in the past was Mr. Stuna, who was present at the Uruguay World Exhibition in the early start of this year. Were you there as well? Because I know that you have won the exhibit, and the books itself won the large gold medals. And would you say that that is the confirmation of the quality of the material and the book that it is? Well,
the book has got 97, which is an almost unheard of score in the literature world. And it's now won the Dick Winter Award. This is a famous postal historian in America who produced several books on rates and routings, which are the Bible for postal historians. And unfortunately, he's just died. And then I'm going to London in a couple of weeks, where I'm on the shortlist for the Crawford Medal, which is once again something which is...
I'd say that it's like a Nobel Peace Prize in philatelic world, right? Something like that.
I don't know if I would say that. It is...
I mean, the scope of
It's not easy. You'll be surprised, for example, in Uruguay, there were like 40 book entries. So a lot of people are writing books, and it's not just books. It's people are doing this and calling it a book and entering it. And so you're competing against a large varied selection of other authors.
But you were the one who actually won the prize, and
it seems that yes, I'm only a contender for the Crawford Prize. There are 6 people. It's a shortlist of 6 people.
Of course, I mean, you are shortlisted, but would you consider this to be the Philatelic Nobel Peace Prize, as I had said? Or to you personally, I mean.
It's a hard question to answer. I know I write fairly well because of my mum, I suppose, and my training in the army. And I do try to make things interesting. And as I've said, most philatelic books don't do that. I mean, there aren't many books that will have pages on penguins and hedgehogs stealing your stamps. They're just, and the hedgehogs, it's proven they prefer the high values.
Oh yeah, I mean, they know what they're doing.
So this is, and zebras, of course. There were zebras in Central Park. I mean, stamp people are pretty boring, actually. I mean, they've nearly all gone to university, and I couldn't go near university, not even through the back door. You were saying you went to university. I was thinking, wow, here's another intellectual.
Okay.
So that, you know, it's a wide range of people collect stamps.
Absolutely.
And they have different ways of writing, but generally, I mean, if you look at a who's who of stamps, half them seem to be doctors. They're lawyers, they're barristers, they're professional people. Nearly everyone has gone to a university and, you know, has come from an academic background.
Oh yeah.
So naturally, they write in a rather dry. That's not a criticism.
No,
I'm just saying,
that's a pure truth. I would say.
But, you know, they don't use. They don't have sentences like, you know, it rained.
Oh yeah.
So I know that I didn't invent that,
Oh, yeah.
but I like to write a bit like that. And most stamp people don't write like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
And they're not nice about people. If stamp people want to talk about any, it's how they got ripped off.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what a lying, thieving bastard he is. People generally aren't very complimentary about one another.
No, they really
And
aren't.
Scott Treppel, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, he wrote a long, I'll leave this book with you. He wrote a long review, which I'm very flattering. And he explains quite well in the book, in his review about my book, what makes it different is because I'm actually nice about people.
Okay.
And of course, I admit to making mistakes, like spending $22,000 on a forgery. And that would hurt you, wouldn't it?
I mean, that would hurt probably anyone, but...
It hurt me. But it's fun to talk about. And everyone's made mistakes, but people aren't going to talk about it.
But I'd say that it's only human to actually own your own mistakes and to talk about them, you know, publicly, because then people can actually learn. And
so do you think Mr. Trump is going to stand up 5 years from now and say, I was a silly idiot?
Well...
Do you think he's going to do that? No, he isn't going to do. I don't think people actually are prepared to admit to making mistakes.
No.
And rather than
they're generally
fibbing,
not.
they just won't mention it.
Yeah.
But as I say, I feel being self-deprecating helps to make the book a bit more accessible.
Absolutely.
And what I wanted to do was to make it accessible to people and not boring.
And not only to the academia people.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. That's the actual motto of the OSFS because that is the goal that we are trying to to fulfill. That we're trying to bring philately to the non-philatelic people and just ordinary people who.
That's brilliant. I didn't know that. That's very nice when I hear that. Yes.
Yeah, just to chew up the hard topics of philately into more edible and easier way. So
digestible.
Digestible, yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. You've got a publication right in front of you. So would you mind sharing what is that book lying just in front of you?
Well. It's really a book that, if I just give you what it's about, really.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, by the way, talking about artificial intelligence, listen to this. My book's got 373 pages. Or is it? No, 743 pages.
743.
So we thought for a giggle we'd ask AI to give a synopsis, but wait for it, in 6 words.
Okay.
Right? Because, synopses are terribly difficult to craft.
Absolutely.
Which, I'm pretty good at that, actually. But so there is a synopsis here. But they managed to do that.
Okay. Did you actually use it, the draft?
No.
That's disappointing.
Here we are, you see. This booklet offers you an insight into the book which is now published. The book, which is in 2 volumes, is an in-depth study of outbound New York foreign mail. I make several suggestions in an effort to update parameters which have stood unquestioned since the genre was first introduced in 1926. That's really the synopsis of the whole book.
Oh, yeah.
And as you probably know, I think it's in academia as well, that the critical element in any writing is to make it as groundbreaking as possible. And generally speaking, it's incredibly difficult to be groundbreaking.
Absolutely.
Because most of what needs to be said has been said before. But in philately, as I have discovered, there really have been pretty bad mistakes made. And, philatelists guard what's gone before very, very preciously. I remember the article of the London Illustrated Journal, when I sent an article, he said, "Nick, you can't change these thoughts. They're what people have been following for the last 150 years. And I wrote back to him and said, well, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Or, that because people have always thought that way doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct.
That is correct, and it's the right way to actually progress, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's the secret, and that's why I think it's done so well, is because I did manage to find quite a lot that needed changing.
Would you, has anyone actually helped you putting that book, or was it just
well, it's an amalgamation of stuff that you build up over the years. Everyone's helped me.
Of course, yeah.
And especially Camilla, since she developed artificial intelligence and ways of translating quite complicated English into understandable Czech. It's been brilliant for Camilla and brilliant for me, because it means that she's really, really understanding what I'm talking about.
And what the topic means,
Camilla, isn't it? without flattering her, but this is, they say AI it can't be creative. That's not true.
That is really nice that you actually acknowledge her input into this book. Are you planning to translate this book into other languages, for example, the Czech language?
Yes. Probably Spanish.
Okay.
And Czech.
Why Spanish?
Because my book's been published by the Collectors Club of New York, and the president wrote to me only yesterday, Larry Haber, and he's received a request from the Spanish Philatelic Society about publishing rights, translation and stuff. Wonderful.
So that must make you very proud of your work, right?
I don't know. I suppose I've been living with it for a bit too long now. And of course I would be upset if I don't win, for example, the Crawford Medal.
Oh yeah.
But it's apples and oranges in these literature competitions, because you get someone, as I say, who writes something not much fatter than that, and I'm writing a two volume book like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure how you can really compare them, but they have to.
Yeah. Are you going to attend the Birmingham exhibition?
Yes, I'm going to Birmingham.
Okay. Are you going to exhibit something?
Well, not only that, but my book's contending.
Oh, so you're wonderful.
So we'll see what these Brits think about it.
Oh, yeah. So that'd be good comparison to the Uruguay exhibition, right?
It'll be incredibly different. Uruguay was logistically a very, very difficult exhibit, a difficult venue, and
So, have you got any expectations for the results in Birmingham?
Well, I would like to think that I would win both categories, because that has been happening.
Oh yeah, that has been happening. But
these are English, and don't forget the English used to run the empire. So they probably, I don't know whether they like my sense of humour. I actually have
I think they do, because they understand it. It's in their nature.
I have a half page on, this is a good phrase now, self-aggrandizement. Do you know what that means?
No, please enlighten me.
Aggrandizement means showing off.
Okay.
And I read a review in the Royal, and it was clear that they thought someone was showing off, or maybe they didn't like his article or her article. And so I wrote a paragraph on self-aggrandizement, because my whole book is a bit showing off. But I make the point in the book,
Of course.
If people aren't going to send up this material, who is?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is in a way showing off, but who else, as you said, who else is going to put the whole collection into a book? And that's actually what writing a book is about, that you have to show off what you've collected over the years.
Well, Scott Treppel actually said in his review he was going to say something nasty about me.
Oh.
And then he read this paragraph on self-aggrandizement, and he said,
he changed his mind.
I don't have to write anything about it. That was quite nice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it showed how closely reading the book, how closely he read it.
Wonderful. We've already mentioned Birmingham this year, so are you excited, or are you looking forward to attend any other philatelic exhibitions happening this year?
After Birmingham, there is a event at Liberates, and then I did nothing else now until Boston, which is 18 months away, a long way away.
2026, yeah.
So I can't sell the exhibit or retire it, because I've got to have it for Boston.
Of course.
There are people who would buy the exhibit whole, but I would probably get more money if I sold it, the covers individually. And,
rather than the whole exhibition.
There aren't so many people who've got, say, $1.5 million, which is what they'd have to pay for it.
Damn.
That's quite a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it is.
So it will probably be sold individually, but I will delay selling it until after Boston at least.
At least. Yeah.
And I've got to try and be creative and think of how I can use this material in some other way.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Do you think that you would put up another exhibit to probably?
Yes, sure, you bet I would. And I would love to be creative enough to think of some other way of using the material.
For another exhibit?
Yes, for another different type of exhibit.
So those are the plans after Birmingham, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, potentially after Boston, but we'll see how that turns on. You've been a collector for the last 50 to 60 years. Was there any really interesting forgeries that you have come across?
Well, the one that I mentioned to you is probably the most expensive mistake. I bought it from a man who was my best man in Prague. He's unfortunately lived in New Orleans. He's died. That's been the most interesting one, and the one that has two good certificates. In other words, the Philatelic Foundation in New York has said there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it looked
twice
trustworthy, right?
And another chap called Stanley Richmond has his notation on the back saying it's correct in all respects, or it's sound. Well, it isn't. It's a fake.
So who actually found out that was actually fake?
Well, I found out through my own devices, because I didn't recognize the postmark. And the one thing I do know about is postmarks, not about postal history. And the postmark didn't seem to fit up with the date of this cover. Then I discovered that the ship that it was supposed to sail on had been dismantled 5 years previously. So I thought, how can a ship that's in pieces carry it across the ocean? So there were some obvious things, really, once you started digging.
The context, right?
And then of course, I wasn't such an altruistic thing to tell people about this, because I couldn't happily sell it knowing what I knew about it. I mean, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you've got a forgery, you can't just...
Yeah, I know it's a fraud.
Yeah.
I just know it is.
Yeah.
Other people wouldn't, but I do. So I wouldn't, I'm not a saint or anything, but I couldn't do that.
No, I mean, you would be harming yourself really, and your honour. And
It would be a very personal thing, yes.
Yeah, that's just nasty. So, any other interesting forgeries than the one we mentioned?
Oh, of course, with stamps. Stamps are much more easier to forge.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had reperforated stamps, regummed stamps. It happens to all collectors.
Oh yeah, it does.
You often come to this crossroads where something's such a bargain price, and you think, oh, I'd love that, but there must be something wrong with it. I'm going to risk it.
It's like when you want to scratch something and you're just unsure if it's going to make it worse or better. But
yes,
I get that. When you look back at the philatelic and real estate career, are there any parallels?
Yes.
Anything that...
Here's a nice little story, and it's in the book. I sold all my stamps at Harmer's New Bond Street in 1972. I had one stamp left, and it was a $5 Colombian, very famous stamp with original gum. And I sold it for £2,750.
Okay.
And my wife, my wife had been to the hospital for a termination, dearie me. And I was walking back from the hospital, and I passed a house that had a big for sale sign on.
Oh no, I know where this is heading.
And I went down to the estate agency office, which is just down the end of the road, and I said, how much is the house? And they said, £2,750. I just not, that was the truth.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd never bought a house before, so I said, well, here's a check. He said, well, you need to find an attorney, a pravnik or something. I said, oh, well, anyway, here's the check, you do all that stuff. And that's how I bought my first house. And from then on, it's just
kept on growing.
Legend. Yes.
Wonderful.
That's how it started.
That's just incredible.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
No, you couldn't. You really couldn't. Mr. Kirke, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed talking to you.
I mean, the pleasure was all mine. I'm sorry I did so much talking. But it is lovely to have the opportunity to talk about this hobby that I love and keeps me alive. And so I probably said a bit too much, but you've been great fun.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you again.